I am really honored to be here to speak with your church members, my brothers and sisters in Christ. I did have the opportunity to share this link with followers on my page as well. So it's okay. With members from my page as well, I have about probably 2,500 followers. So I wanted to wait and send it to them late in case a lot of them started coming in. But you know how things are when it comes to money. I don't know why we won't educate ourselves. We always don't have a lot of people that will, maybe sit in and try to educate ourselves about our finances. And so my family and I really tried to take the opportunity to realize that when we went through financial calamity and we started crawling ourselves out of it, I felt a pull to educate my friends and colleagues and neighbors and church members about finances. But there was one key ingredient that some financial educators don't teach you, and that's budgeting and managing your money God's way. My husband and I started with nothing. But not only did we start with nothing, we started in the negative because we had poor financial choices. So I'm going to go down the list of some things that happened to us. And if you do a thumbs up or put a 7 in the chat, because I would love for the chat to be, can everyone see the chat, Pastor Mike, by chance? Is your chat open so other people can see it? Because we may use the chat tonight. But if this was you, I want you to type a 7 in the chat. We started with probably the lowest credit score possible. We faced eviction notices. We faced insufficient funds. We faced the issue of the payday credit loan, whatever those companies are. We ran into that. We ran into car repossession. We also ran into garnishment, check garnishment. So everything except a bankruptcy happened to us. And it was really funny. My husband, I guess it wasn't funny, but it was really, the Holy Spirit guiding us the entire time. We were raised in the church. We were not strangers to Christianity. We were not strangers to biblical teachings, but sometimes we didn't apply everything. And my husband and I sat down and said, we are not tithing. We just aren't tithing. We aren't stewarding our money in the way that God wants us to. And before you start getting all tight about the tithing word, because it really makes some people nervous, I want to share with you what it did for us. So what we learned, and as we studied, is that when we dedicated a portion of what our income was to God, it immediately seemed to be this shakedown of priorities where we had enough. But when we didn't, our funds, y'all, were devoured. And I mean, we could never seem to make ends meet. And I don't know what you heard. I'll tell you about social media. Social media will have you thinking that you need to change. The Bible never changes. Christ doesn't change. And his teachings, his teachings don't change. They remain the same. And so what I hope to share with you tonight is just our story about that, but also the practical part about budgeting. What does God say about budgeting, and how do we incorporate that into our lives? I'm going to share my screen for the remainder of our time tonight. And I want to know, so I'm an educator. That's something that Tasha shared with you. So I like to have feedback. I like to hear you. I like to see the chat. So if you can see my screen, I want you to put a 7 in the chat box so that I can know that you actually see my screen. So great. Oh yeah, I see it popping up. I love to see the chat. I'm gonna put the chat over here. If you see me doing like this, that's because I have a screen over here that I'm looking at that I want to be able to share some things with you. All right, so why Project 3910? Project 3910 was inspired by Proverbs chapter 3, verses 9 through 10. And it says, honor the Lord with your wealth, with the first fruits of all of your crops. Then your barns will be filled to overflowing, your vats will brim with new wine. we went through a season of just really low motivation when it came to our finances. We were very discouraged. And as we started stewarding our money and started honoring God with our finances, and I don't know if you know this, but honoring God with your finances is not just tithing. It's making sure that you're placing money in really good financial decisions that you know have been stewarded by what God has taught us. But there's a then statement. So when I see then statements in God's words, those tell me that those are promises. And it says, then your barns will be filled to overflowing. And I don't know about you, but I want my barns to overflow. And so with that, I want to also be obedient to what he has for us. So I got another chat activity for you. I want you to complete this sentence. I will tell you my why, but I would love for you to type in your why. I want to improve my finances so that I can, and you tell me what that can is, and I'll tell you some of mine. I want to be able to leave my children with something. I want to be able to, oh, I love that, Jewel. You want to retire well, retire eventually. I want to improve my finances so that I can bless my grandchildren and great grandchildren. I did not come. All of y'all want to retire. Nobody wants to fit. No, somebody wants to keep working. That's good. Oh, good. Tamala, you made it. I'm so glad you made it in here. Give more and leave an inheritance. Yes. Want to give an inheritance. Leave my 6 kids a will, not a hello. A will, not a bill. I love that. Remove curses, financial freedom, no stress, help others. Ron, I'm going to park right there with what you said about helping others. I listened to another financial guru that I like to listen to, and it was interesting that he said, imagine what the people in the kingdom of God could do if the people in the kingdom of God could steward over their money. Could you imagine what we could do and how we could be even further extensions of Christ, of his hands, of his help, if those of us who had the means actually stewarded it well? And that was something that always impacted me. You can continue to add in the chat if you want, but I really appreciate what you shared so far. So I'm going to go through some snippets throughout today. And I do think this is recorded, so it may be played back, but you can also perhaps take a picture, or you can, oh, what are we laughing at? I love to see what was in the chat. Oh, maybe it was the wheel, not a bill. But anyway. You may want to take some notes tonight. And so they'll be kind of in bold words if there's some notes that you want to take. I also want to encourage you to look at some items and study, some words and how God has encouraged us to steward finances well. But the first thing you have to do if you are going to budget is make a decision about needs versus wants. I'm going to tell you tonight about how to start an emergency fund. When do you really need to use your savings as an emergency? And for me, my cable not working or my TV not working may not be a need for me. But for someone else, perhaps that's what you define a need. So that's the cool thing about your financial business being your business. It is your business, and you get to decide how that works. But for me, my Wi-Fi is not necessarily a need. I have it on my cell phone, so that may not be a need for me. But what if you work at home and that's a need for you? So you want to identify what is a need versus a want. Some of you may have cosmetic prescriptions. For example, I take prescriptions, but they're cosmetic prescriptions. They're not necessarily life-saving prescriptions. So a prescription for me may not be a need. But if you have a life-saving prescription, that then may be a need for you. And that would be something you want to identify as you steward over your money. But look at what God encourages us. And this is not just with money, but it doesn't not apply to money. In 1 Corinthians, he says, when I was a child, I spoke as a child. I understood as a child. I thought as a child. But when I became a man, I put away childish things. And what I take from that here is, as a mature adult, I can make sound decisions. I should make decisions out of wisdom. I should make decisions out of having consult with advisors and mentors, my pastor, ministers, with my time with God. It's not just these rash, childish, perhaps immature decisions when it comes to finances. However, as an adult, have I made childish decisions? Yes, I have. So I don't want you to think that it's just, all perfect and all peaches and cream. I certainly have, but that's something that you want to think about. This is a big one, and I want you to write this down. You can either write it as I control my money or you control the money, however you want to write it. But what I'm telling you is you control the money. Money is a thing. It is a tool. It is not something that should rule us. It is something that we should control. We tell it where to go. A good friend of mine, she said, all of my dollars have a job. Every income that I receive has a job to do. Now, some of that job may be to pay my light bill. It may have a job to buy groceries. It may have a job for me to go shopping or vacation or pay my car note or put gas in my car. Every single dime I make, I put it to work. I make that money work for me because I put my blood, sweat, and tears in that to make that money, to earn that. And so what I like here, it says, like a city whose walls are broken through is a person who lacks self-control. When we let money control us, we are also not controlling ourselves and making those wise decisions. We don't want to let the dollars control us. And that also leads to stress and anxiety. When we get really stressed about bills and certain notes. Let's think about a car. This may hurt some toes. When your car note is just too high and it makes you really annoyed. I don't think anybody made you get that car. And I'm saying that to say we may have to drive or walk or do certain things that aren't necessarily cute or pretty, but they help us with financial stewardship. I have a girlfriend that I'll never forget this story. She was talking to me about her finances and she said, I really don't know what to do. And I encouraged her to talk with her family and see if she can move in with her family to save up money to get a better foundation so that she can move out. And she said, oh no, I'll never move my mom. I just got too much pride. Will never do it. What do you think she came to say to me 2 years later? She said, I have to move in with I have nothing now because I exhausted it all and I didn't take that advice. Am I telling you to move in with family? No, because I know that's hard. I know that's really hard to do. But sometimes when we put ourselves in such a bind, we have to have a budget reset moment. And we have to step back and reset. And so remember that you control the money. You've got to set your purpose. Why are you saving money? Why do you want to have your finances in order? The Bible tells us, let your eyes look directly forward and your gaze be straight before you. Now, when we're talking about finances, how often can you say, I'm about to save $1,000 to go towards a new refrigerator. But then little Johnny has a high school dance that he wants to go to, and you want to go buy little Johnny a suit. I got a little Johnina, so I know about that situation. Or you have this really cool TV went on sale, and it never goes on sale. And you got that $1,000 sitting there and it is itching in your pocket, it's burning a hole. You, my friend, are not focused. You have not set your purpose on why am I saving this money? Why am I trying to organize? If you scroll back through the chat, many of you told me how you were able to, why you wanted to save money, why you wanted to get your finances in order. You want to keep your why in front of you. You want to keep that something that you're looking at. Stay one step ahead. And what do I mean by that? How many of you, and I'm just going to be transparent here, always forgets to prepare to set aside money for your car tag? That's me. It may not be any of you but me, but it seems like every February I forget that my last name is Burton and that it is time to get my tag renewed and I'm in a panic. That is crazy. I've been dry. Kevin said 7. Oh, Kevin, you are not alone. I do the same thing. You too, Natasha. And it may not be your car tag, but it can be that annual Amazon fee. If you have Amazon Prime and you forget that every July, I don't know if there's a July for everybody, but you forget that you have this fund. But also you have an annual life insurance bill, or you have an annual, insurance payment that you're forgetting. My friends, stay one step ahead. And what that means is organize and prioritize your funds so that you don't have these consistent pop-up expenses. I have no excuse to why I forget to set money aside for my car tag. There's really no excuse for that. So I'm sharing that, exposing myself so that you're not alone. All right. And finally, keep your budget flexible. I talk about flexibility when it comes to a budget like tight jeans. Now, I know tight jeans are in for some, but when I see you walking in them, you do not look flexible. They look like they hurt. And if anybody is in tight jeans, they are uncomfortable because you can't move. You don't have breathing room. Your budget is the same way. You need to create cushion in your budget. I always tell people, and get this, you may want to write this down. When you are budgeting, round your paycheck down and round your bills up. Round your paycheck down and round your bills up. And you do this so that you have some cushion, but also don't be so hard on yourself if you mess up in your budget. And so one thing I want to share with those who are couples, for example, you're trying to make this thing work. You're trying to make your money thing work. I remember when my husband and I got married, he was over the finances because we were all in this, you're the man, you're supposed to do the money. That was so silly because we had to realize who had the skill. That's who we needed to be over the finances. And he did not have the skill, but his wife had the skill. And so we had to flip that because I was coming home to the cable being cut off and I couldn't understand why we had good paying jobs, but our cable was getting cut off. And it was because he didn't quite know how to manage it. But when we flipped that and we learned how to manage it, sometimes I would still make mistakes. And he would immediately say, it's all right. We'll just, try to fix it. That was a load off of me because we were being flexible about mistakes in the budget, about forgiveness in the money conversations. That's a whole nother talk about marriage and finances. My husband and I did a 6-part video on it. He's not the budgeter, which I just told y'all that, and I am. So if you can only imagine being married to someone who is not excited about spreadsheets, that's a whole nother thing. All right. So we're shifting. I want to know if you have a budget. So yay or nay in the chat. Do you have a budget? So you could do a Y or an N if you have a budget. If you want one, put a W, I just kind of want a budget. I don't know if I really have one, but, I love this. A lot of W's, got a lot of Y's, got a few W's in there. This is the quickest way to manage your budget or to create a budget. The first thing you need to do is the simplest, but it is the step that everybody misses. List every single expense. List when I say every single expense, I mean that annoying $1 payment that Apple will send you to pay for storage, your $2 Google storage that may be on your bill, your $6.99 Hulu account, even those tiny bills, not just your food, your car, your house, every single expense. And also don't forget to schedule play money. Any of you like to shop? I do. I see Nicole like, I do. I do too. And so I want to put that in my budget because one, that adds flexibility. I'm not money shaming myself, but I'm also organizing my finances in a way that lets me live off of the hard-earned dollars that I earn every day. List payment dates. When you're creating your budget, list the date that the item needs to be paid, but also understand you can pay things early. Now, I know that there are some generations that are used to that. And there are some generations that are not. I won't call which is which. However, it is okay to pay a bill 2 weeks before it's due. There's nothing wrong with that. When I started budgeting, I would wait till the last minute and then realize, why am I sitting here holding this? Get this out of my mind and pay it. You also have auto pay now. If I'm being transparent, I have trauma from too many insufficient funds back in the day. Auto pay makes me nervous. Well, I don't know if I'm the only one that auto pay makes nervous, but it makes you nervous. Auto pay makes me nervous because back in the day, I didn't manage my money well. And so I wasn't sure, if you could do that. But I do have a few things that are auto pay. Manage your income. And so when I say manage your income, what I'm saying is align your payments with your income. Don't be afraid to call a creditor or your bill pay and say, I want to move my pay date to a different date so it works with my income. Did you know you could do that? You can call your utility bill, your car note, your mortgage or rent payment. Rent is really not as nice and flexible. They really stick kind of to that first through the fifth type thing. But other bills, you can call and say, I get paid on these dates. I want to move my bill payment to this date, and they can do that. And so I've had that. Student loan payments, you can make that happen. This picture may freak some of you out, and some of you may say, oh, hey, this makes me excited. It's a little blurry. I don't really need you to have to see the numbers, but this is a sample or example of what my budget spreadsheet looks like. We list everything that we have to pay, the pay dates, and the amounts. So this is not really my real budget, but this is a sample budget. And I probably can send you a link to that. And while I have you still on here, I want you to take down my email. I'm going to put it in the chat. It's info@theburtongroup.co, not .com, but .co. And if you email me tonight, I am going to send you a free budget template. That budget template it can be an Excel or a PDF, but if you email me tonight, and this is just for you all who are able to attend, email me at info@theburtongroup.co, and you will get a free template download from me. All right, so fixing your credit. When I came on here, I told you that we had really low credit. So however low credit goes, that's where ours was. So in the high threes, low fours, wherever that number is, we swam there and lived there for quite some time. Why were we there? We didn't know how to manage money. We didn't know what credit meant. And now our credit number one, we don't check it often. We're always thrown money, thrown cash, approved for all of these things, because we were able to steward and manage our credit better. I will never forget the time when we went to go purchase me a car, and I told my husband, I said, well, I want it to be this color. I want it to look like this. This is some of the features that I need. And then we stopped and looked at each other and said, do you realize that we can now get what we want? We used to go to the dealership saying, let me see what I can get. Let's see what they'll approve us for, opposed to this is what we want and this is what we're going to pay. Regardless of the sticker price, this is what we're telling them we're paying. And we bought 2 vehicles that way because when you have good credit, you now have better buying power. And when you have better buying power, you can make better financial decisions that work for you. So let me tell you, though, how we fixed our credit and some things you can do to fix your credit if you are in a space that you need to improve. Number 1, check your credit report. Check your credit report, and you can check it often. I'm giving you some site here, annualcreditreport.com. I'll type it in the chat just so you have it. I think I spelled that right. I'm almost scared to hit send. Annualcreditreport.com. I put .co, y'all. I messed that up. Annualcreditreport.com. They actually allow you to run free credit reports once a year. Also, Equifax They have a great system that you can sign up with Equifax, and they even give you credit alerts. I get alerts whenever there is a credit change with mine. We also use Credit Karma. I know people who hate Credit Karma. I don't hate Credit Karma because I'm not trying to add more funds or get more credit. I'm not trying to loan things. I simply used it several years ago as a way to monitor and manage the things that popped up on our credit. So, that's something that you could use. We used to have, we had blemishes on our credit. When I met my husband, and this is a tip for those of you who are dating or in the future, before you get married, swap credit reports. I really do mean that. That can look scary. That can, make some of you nervous, but my husband and I did that. Before we got married, we sat down and we swapped credit reports, because that then showed us what we were dealing with and who we were dealing with when we started, looking into our finances. But what was interesting is my husband had a bankruptcy on his credit that wasn't his. He has a very common name, Donald Burton. It's not really fancy. It's, there's tons of Donald Burtons out there. And I said, how did you get a bankruptcy at the age of 13? And he said, that is so strange. We went through the dispute process ourselves. Now, I'm not knocking any of the credit fix people. I know that that's a really great business. It helps people, but you can also fix your credit with disputes on your own for free. You contact the credit bureaus, you write them a letter and say, this is an issue on my credit report and I need you to investigate it. And they will do that. And that bankruptcy was removed within like 2 months when we did that. Number 2, check for credit errors and dispute them. That's pretty much what I was just talking about. You want to look at your credit report, check for credit errors and dispute them. You can dispute online now. You can dispute on apps on your phone. You can mail a letter to them. We even had a letter to the IRS because there was a lien on our account that was not ours one time. And so we wrote to them and they were able to remove that. So those are some things that you can do to take control of your credit. Tip number 3 is key. If you have a credit card, I want you to make sure that you do not use that credit card over 30% of the balance. When you do, your credit score goes down. When you use 30% or less, guess what happens to your credit score? Yep, thanks, Darlene. It goes up. Your credit will go up. So let's say if I have $1,000 credit limit, I should not spend any more than $300 on that card, or carry a balance rather over $300 on that credit card. Because if I do, my credit score is going to be heavily impacted. Not slightly, it actually harms you more than a credit inquiry. That's how bad carrying a heavy balance on your credit card can impact your credit. If you're trying to buy a house, purchase a car, but especially a house, they are going to look at your credit usage, and you want your usage to be below 30%. I tell people all the time, the quickest way to make your credit shoot up is that if you have revolving credit cards, you want that credit usage to be below 30%. And I know I've kind of been harping on that, but that is so important and it's something that you can do. So what are some ways you can do to manage that? Set a spending cap, set a spending cap yourself on how much you will do that. Some credit cards companies will do that for you. My card will tell me if I'm over a certain amount, and it will say, hey, you can keep spending, but just letting you know, you will get mad if you do. But we want you to, because we got finance charges we can charge you. We'll even increase your limit just to make you happy. Pay down your credit often. Make activity and continue to make those payments on that to pay it down. Here's another trick for you. If you are paying your mortgage and you want to pay it down faster without changing your terms, cut your payment in half and pay it every 2 weeks. what's going to happen is every year you're going to end up making an extra payment because of the way 52 weeks or 26 pay periods are designed. You will add an additional payment per year. And what that will do is add to the principal on your mortgage or your larger payment, and it'll go down. We can talk about those details later. I'll pause right quick. Make sure if you're on Facebook that you are following my page. It's Project 3910 Budgeting. And I also have a Project 3910 Community. And the community is where we kind of post all sorts of things. You know, the budgeting page is a bit more serious, but the community, people ask questions. And I also have an Instagram, so you can follow on Facebook or Instagram. All right, back to credit. Avoid late payments. Do not get late on your payments. Avoid late payments like the plague. They are right up there with that additional credit usage where you can impact your bill heavily. So use autopay for those of you who are not scared to. Create calendar reminders. Most of us carry this around with us all day, this cell phone. Set a reminder on your phone when a bill needs to be paid if that's something you need. Organize your payment dates. And I said this a little bit earlier. Organize it in a way that aligns to your pay date. Number 5, pay down debt. And this is how we started digging ourselves out of this hole. And this is something I want to encourage you to do. There are 2 methods. One is called the debt snowball, and one is called the debt avalanche. You can pick either one, and I'm going to explain what the debt snowball is and the debt avalanche. The first thing you need to do is always pay more than the minimum payment. If you're paying the minimum payment, you will never pay that debt off. So just so you know, I mean, you may, but it will cost you about 3 times more than what the money was actually worth. But I want you to perhaps you do a screenshot or take a picture of this slide, but you have a debt snowball and a debt avalanche. And so the debt snowball is where you add all of your extra money to your lowest debt until you pay it off. That means you may want to forgo going out or forgo shopping or whatever your extra money is. You want to put all of that extra money, even if it's $25, to your lowest debt. As soon as you pay that debt off, you want to take that debt payment and steal that extra money, and you want to put it to the next lowest debt. And you keep doing that until you pay off all of your debts. Or you can do the debt avalanche. It's the same concept, but instead of using your lowest debt, you start with the debt that has the highest interest rate. And so you'll see that there are benefits to one. So for example, the debt snowball, the benefit is that you gain momentum better. Anybody like to see that their methods are working? It's kind of like losing weight. I'll sit and get up and get ready to get my salad and kind of my keto inspired stuff. And in 2 days, I expect to have lost 30 pounds. And it does not work like that. That's how I like to dream and think. I'm like, man, I'm eating all this lettuce and protein and the scale actually goes up. It doesn't do anything. But with the debt snowball, you get more momentum and you get to actually see that what you're doing is working. The debt avalanche, it's slower, but you are going to save more money because you save in interest. So it really depends on which one aligns with you better. Number 6, avoid credit changes. That is another thing. Avoid credit changes. Be very slow to close credit card accounts. Now, I will never tell you not to close a credit card account. I've closed them. But what happens is, let's say you're trying to purchase a house or trying to get a loan, or I don't know, and you close a credit card account. Does anybody know what happens as soon as you close it? Your credit score plummets. And it plummets because there's just been some change to those FICO calculations. There's been changes to what comes into your credit, and that number goes down. Now, eventually, within about 6 weeks, that number climbs right back up, and you get to see the gains in that. So that's why I always say, don't just not close them out, but be very slow to do that. But don't open additional credit because that also will impact your credit score if you're trying to fix your credit. Rebuild your credit. How do you rebuild it? I've told you all of these things that you can do. How do you also rebuild it? Look at these 4 things. 1, get a secure credit card. That's how we started building ours. We reached out to MasterCard. They gave us, I think, a $250 secure credit card where we had to pay $250 on this credit card. So they didn't give us anything, actually. But what they did is they reported to the credit bureaus how often our spending, our utilization, and I've even learned that Equifax has a new monitoring system where they can align non-credit bearing payments to help improve your credit, like rent and things like that. Number 2, I've said this over and over, use your credit cards, keep your credit cards under 30%. Keep it under 30%. Next, be an authorized user on someone who has good credit. So not just your mama or dad or auntie because you think they have good credit. It needs to be someone that you know and they trust you and you aren't using their credit, but it helps build that. Sometimes parents will do that for their children. Track your credit activity. Sign up with Equifax. Sign up with Credit Karma. Your bank probably has a credit tracking system with your bank. Call them and ask them, can I pull my credit through you? And sometimes some banks will do that. So our last section, I know I've told you so much tonight, and I hope that this has been beneficial to you. If you have questions, I want you to place them in the chat right now, all throughout the night. And I meant to tell you that as we started. If you have questions, go ahead and ask them to me. As a teacher, I never wanted my students to hold on to a question. If they had one, I wanted them to go ahead and ask it. You can send it to me privately. Look for Khalilah.Burton. That's my email. Look for Khalilah Burton, and that'll be my name on here. You can place that there, or you can place it publicly if you have a question that does not need to be quiet. Not quiet, private. Here's some savings tips. When we started turning our finances around, we left our debit cards at home. Could you imagine doing that? Leaving your debit card at home? We couldn't imagine doing it, but that's how we taught ourselves financial discipline. We left our debit cards on the table and it helped us. Here are 3 tips. 1, don't link your savings account to your main account. Anybody want to guess why that's not a good idea? Because as soon as your main account gets low, you're going to start that. What is this? Pinch. I want to pinch over here, pinch a little bit. Another tip, and I see your question, so I'll ask it in just a minute. Don't order a debit card to your savings account. You're trying not to use that money. So don't order a debit card. Set up automatic deposits from every paycheck. They can be as low as $5. They can also be as high as $500. But go ahead and set an automatic deposit from your paycheck into your savings account. Now, this may take effort if you say you're someone who's on a direct deposit type job or type role. You do have to go to HR, refill out more papers, have them split it, but that's the work you're doing so that you can get this happen. Or you can set up a schedule in your bank account that on payday, you automatically deposit $5 into your account. So you don't necessarily have to do it without seeing it. You can do either way. All right, we have a question here. How can we get with you to get your company assistance? Send me an email at info@theburtongroup.co and we can get together. All right, first, when you're looking at an emergency fund, do you remember when we, in the beginning, I asked you, I said, you need to define what is a need versus a want. And when you are looking at your emergency fund, that is something that you want to determine. First and foremost, I tell young people this all the time. I see we have a few on the camera. Save $1,000 that is untouchable. That means you don't bother it, you don't pinch off of it. unless you are in a dire need type situation. Save it and forget it. And then I want you to define an emergency. Talk with yourself or with your partner or with your family. What do we consider an emergency? I'll give you an example. We didn't consider a TV on sale an emergency. Now, we may have wanted to, wanted to say, oh man, that flat screen was $550, now it's $375. If that's not in the budget, that's not an emergency. That's not what you use that money for. But we also went through Hurricane Sally 2 years ago. I don't know if you all heard about it up north where you are. And I say up north like y'all are so far away. I'm in Daphne down by Mobile. So I'm about 5.5 hours away from you. Hurricane Sally kind of ripped through our area and we were out of power for, take a guess, put in the chat how many days you think we were without power. It was a trip. We were without power for some days, 2 weeks, 7 days, 1 month. Oh gosh, no, not 1 month, 10 days. Oh, Miss Eileen said 20 days. Oh goodness. We were without power for 9 days. Can you imagine being without power for 9 days? And what was comforting in that was that, you're in Huntsville. So you went through that, you know about tornadoes and all that. What we did is we were able to go buy a generator immediately on day 2 because we had an emergency fund set aside and we considered not having power an emergency. And so we were able to dig into our emergency fund and go buy a generator. And we bought it without worrying about, were we impacting our light bill? Were we impacting our mortgage? Were we impacting a car note? That money was set aside for an emergency. Next, I want you to create a plan, and this can be over time. This is not in 1 year. This is not in 1 month. It may take you 5 years to do this, but create a plan to where you have 3 to 6 months of expenses saved up. And I would even say, because of the way the economy is now, you can stretch that to 9 months. Anywhere between 3 and 9 months of expenses set aside that if you either lost your job, if the government shut down, but the bills didn't, however you get income, and you could not continue living with your expenses, you were able to pay those expenses. And your expenses are usually your 4 walls. Anybody want to guess what your 4 walls are? What we're calling the 4 walls? See if you can type those in the chat. Your 4 walls are going to be the most important expense. There you go, Latasha. Home, transportation, utilities, food. Some of you may even include prescriptions in there. Because remember, I told you, if you have life-saving prescriptions, that may be part of perhaps food. But your 4 walls, shelter, transportation, food. Those are the things that you want to be able to have enough money to always pay for in the event you're not able to. Deferred spending. I'll tell you a funny story. So it's kind of funny. It was the very first time my husband and I went to a financial advisor. And we sat with this financial advisor and she went through my budget. And the first thing that I thought was interesting was she said, you set aside a lot of money for your church, but you don't really have a lot of money to spend in other areas. That's impressive. She wanted to say, you spend too much money and you're tithing. She wanted to say that. And I didn't, fall into that, because what I let her know is that the reason I'm able to sit here with you is because I am obedient with my funds and the reason why I could do that. So she later caught on, but this was also funny. She said, so how much do you have in savings? I said, well, I have 2 savings. We have a savings account that we don't touch, but I also have a savings that if I need to pinch off of it, I pinch off of that savings. And she said, so what you really have is deferred spending, not really savings. And I thought to myself, that's accurate. It's called deferred spending. Well, now deferred spending, or some people or even companies will call it a sinking fund. Deferred spending is money that you set aside to be used later. So it's not really saved, but you're going to spend it later. For example, my husband is an attorney. I didn't marry an attorney, by the way. And so we have a whole testimony about how even being obedient in our finances improved us in our careers. I mean, it's a whole thing. So being obedient in that way, it really blesses your life. But he's an attorney, and every year he has to pay a bar fee. And what I started doing is at the beginning of the year, I would save $50 every month to add up to that bar fee. So that $50 a month wasn't really savings because we were going to spend it every September, but I didn't have to wake up all of a sudden and come up with this money that we didn't necessarily have. So you may have licenses at work. You may have to do travel for work where they reimburse you and they don't really pay you up front, that sort of thing. Go ahead and start your birthdays. You may have a loved one or even families that you want to create a birthday fund that you put $10 in every month or $20 in every month. And when it's someone's birthday, you pull from that amount so that you're not feeling like you're always doing that. Christmas or the holidays. Some people will do Christmas savings with their bank accounts. They can do that every year, or you can create that on your own. So I have a list of examples here of what you use for deferred spending. How do you grow your savings? The three great things that you can do is one, a high yield savings account. Now, a high yield savings account is popular for some, a little scary to others. They are FDIC insured banks, meaning they're just like the bank that's right up the street, the Regions, the Bank of America, the Citizens, all of that. They're just like that, but they are online, but they have high percentage returns. And they're usually higher than brick and mortar banks because they are online. Some popular ones are American Express has one, which we actually have one through American Express, but there are several other banks that have very good high yield savings accounts where you can get return off your money where you put your savings. Next, a CD. I know that some people will say, oh, a CD is old school. It doesn't really earn money. Well, I want to let you know something. When our economy got raggedy a few years ago, which growing strategy do you think held steady? It was the CDs. Now, they didn't get a lot of return, but you can still purchase a CD for your money. They're great gifts. They're great birthday gifts. They're great gifts for babies. If you want to give somebody at a baby shower a gift, buy their child a CD. You don't necessarily have to do the Pampers and all that. And money markets. Money markets are also great. Many of you probably have money markets that are attached to your bank that you can use to align with. So I know that was a lot. Any of you still breathing? We put so much into that tonight, but I want to thank you for attending, and I want to share something with you. I created this calendar. It is a budgeting calendar that actually you can sit on your desk. Pastor Mike actually is purchasing quite a few for some of the members there that I'm sure he will share with you. And every day is a budgeting tip. I'm going to go oh, you know what? Someone put a date in the chat, any date, and I'm going to tell you what it says on the calendar. I'm going to go to today's date while you're telling me a date, but today's date, the calendar note for today is September 15th. It says, be intentional about tithing, savings, and giving. That is your note for today. Somebody said 3:30. March 30th, what I have on that date says, March 30th is a prayer, and it's very short. It says, dear Lord, thank you for provision. Amen. And that's something that you think about every day. I'm going to do one more. June 10th. Let's see. June 10th, I have, let's see here. Oh, I went too far. On June 10th, and you can sit it on your desk. We sit ours downstairs. June 10th is a tip. It says, don't spend what you don't have. And I know that sounds really simple, but how many times will you say, oh, I'll just buy this right now and I'll work it out later? That is a prime example that you're spending what you don't have. So if you're interested in one of these calendars, you can purchase them from my website. The website is www.theburtongroup. I'm putting it in the chat, .co, not .com, but .co, theburtongroup.co. And I even have digital downloads on there that you can purchase. I have a 26-page budget workbook. If you want to work through that book, it's great for classes. If you want to teach a financial Bible study, you can use that with it. I am also in the process of writing another book. So go ahead and check out my website and join my social media pages. So before I sign off, are there any questions for me in the chat? And I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Thank you, Tasha. Thank you. Thank you. I'm so glad that so many of you were able to join me tonight. And so, Ms. Eileen, did you see the website on how to get the calendar? I see that you put that in the chat, so I hope that you were able to see that. So Pastor Mike, I am done. That's all that I have for tonight. Thank you for allowing me to come here and speak with your congregation. I want to also thank my friends of Project 3910 who jumped on, all of those sorts of things. So thank you.